This is a great event we have planned. The title of this event is Applying for Orthopedic Surgery Residency at the Setting of Preference Signaling. This event is hosted by the JRGOS Gladden Society and the Orthopedic Surgery Interest Group by the SNMA organization. My name is Kevin Purcell. I'm currently an adult reconstruction fellow at Duke University. Just finished residency at University of Mississippi in Jackson, Mississippi. I am also doing a trauma fellowship next year as well. I'm on the Gladden Society social media team.
Hi, everybody. My name is Kiana Thomas. I'm a third-year medical student at Howard University College of Medicine, interested in orthopedic surgery. I currently serve as social media intern for Gladden Society, as well as a mentorship committee member for the SNMA Orthopaedic Surgery Interest Group.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ingrid Akonta. I'm a medical student at University of Louisville School of Medicine. I'm also part of the Gladden Society social media intern and also part of SNMA OSIG on the mentorship committee with Kiana.
Yeah, so we have a little quick 5-minute PowerPoint presentation that Kiana will provide us. And after that, we'll have the panelists introduce themselves and we'll get into the Q&A section.
Just going to share my screen. Okay, so hi, everybody. We're going to start off with a 5-minute PowerPoint, just like an introduction to signaling with some information from AOA. So what is the supplemental ERAS application? So the new supplemental ERAS application includes geographic preferences, and you can do that by region, by urban or rural setting, information about your most meaningful experiences and other impactful life events, as well as your program signals, which we'll be discussing in detail today. Okay, so what is the purpose of signaling? So signaling allows applicants a reliable and equitable approach to demonstrate interest in a specific program. It's intended to add value to applicants and programs, producing a more equitable, reproducible, efficient, and mutually optimal match. Due to the fact there's increasingly high numbers of applications, some of those may not be able to go under holistic review. So the signaling process is a way to mediate that, to increase applicants' visibility to a program, as well as encouraging holistic review of that application. So how does this work? The signaling program is a voluntary program. There are no additional fees for applicants or programs who opt into this. For orthopedic surgery, you will be able to submit 30 signals of equal weight. All of your signals will be confidential, and programs will only receive a list of those who have signaled them, and they will not know who you have signaled. So that's just a little bit about signaling and how it works. Now we're going to have our panelists introduce themselves. Anybody can start. Dr. Pat, you want to start? Or Dr. Kogan, since you're first on the slide.
Hi, everybody. First of all, thanks for having me. My name is Monica Kogan. I am the program director at Rush University Medical Center in the Department of Orthopedic Surgery. And thanks again for having me.
And I'm Josh Pat, also a member of the social media committee for Gladden Society. And I serve as vice chair of education and was program director of the orthopedic surgery program in Charlotte for about 7 years. We're at Atrium Health, Carolina's Medical Center. And look forward to trying to answer everybody's questions tonight and make sure everybody understands this process so we can have a good first run with the signaling process.
Thanks. I'm Dawn Laporte. I'm really appreciative of you having me here tonight. And I am residency program director and vice chair for education at Johns Hopkins and a member of the Gladden Society, and got to be program director for Dr. Brooks, who's on this call. Thanks.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm also joined my fellow panelists in being appreciative of being here, of being a part of this panel. And I look forward to not only sharing my perspective, but also learning from what other programs are doing. I am currently the program manager and co-director of diversity and inclusion in orthopedic surgery. I'm also the president of the Association of Residency Coordinators in Orthopedic Surgery, as well as a member of the Gladden Society. Thank you.
I'm Mel Harrington. I'm a residency director at Baylor College of Medicine in Houston. I'm past president of the Gladden Society, and it's an honor to be here. I've had the privilege of working with Cord on the signaling subcommittee, so hopefully we can answer some questions.
Yeah. Thank y'all for that. That's amazing. We have about 12, 13 questions that were sent in for us from the survey that we sent out to medical students. So we'll start with those. And then hopefully at the end, we'll have some time for like kind of a Q&A where people can put other supplemental questions in the chat. So the first question we have is it okay to let a program director know you plan on signaling their program? And if so, what is the best way to go about that? And any panelists answer this.
Right, I'll jump in. I think it's certainly okay to let a program director know that you're going to be signaling their program. I don't think it's necessary because they're going to get your signal and know that you're signaling them. But if you want to reach out in advance, you can certainly email the program director. I think that's appropriate to email directly.
Yeah. Any other panelists want to add, or kind of sums it up?
Yeah, I think that's a pretty straightforward answer, what Don said.
Okay. Another question is, should we signal our home program, and should we signal programs we do away rotations at?
I know there's been some discussion and debate going around, and I think the resounding answer is yes. Because not everyone may want to go to their home program, and not everyone may want to go to a program where they rotated. So you need to signal them as well, just to make sure they're still interested, or they know that you're still interested.
And
Yeah, I'll piggyback on to what Mel was saying. I think it's been very clear from Cord that they want people to signal their home programs and signal the rotation programs. And I think everybody on here can echo, when you're looking at 1,000 applications, you could actually forget about somebody. You could forget that somebody rotated early in the year. You could forget about one of your own people, because we're going to have a lot of applications that have signals, with 30 signals going out. So I do think it is very important to signal your home program if you want to go there, and to the programs you rotated out, again, if you want to go there, for the points that Mel outlined. Monica, sorry I interrupted you.
oh no, it's okay. I also think what I heard them talking at a committee meeting, and they had said that they have this so that they have the total number of being 30 to include your rotations and your home rotations. So it's not like it's taking away from, other spots that you can be, other tokens that you can sending out. They purposely made the number 30 to include that and to allow for that.
Okay. Yeah, third question is, how important is signaling for your application review process?
If you want an interview, you better send a signal.
But
So
I
guess
go ahead.
You can answer, Dr. Cogan.
No, I mean, I think that, the signals are great from the program side and from the applicant side, but I think you just need to be smart with your signals. So, I don't know how programs are going to be doing it this year, but I would imagine for a lot of programs that they're still going to be making sure that the applicants fit all of their other criteria. And so, I was talking to a student, his board scores were very, very low. The rest of his application was just not typical for what a lot of programs will have for orthopedics. And so, I said, you may not want to signal, have 1 or 2 reach programs, but to put all of your programs as reach programs, thinking that you're going to get an interview because you signaled them, I don't know if that's necessarily going to be the case. So my recommendation is just be kind of thoughtful as to who you're signaling, and making sure that you fit what, especially on that ORN network, what their criteria has been in the past. I don't know. I look forward to hearing what other people have to say.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And it's really important to talk to your mentors. And this may not be the right question to put this to, but I think it's important to coordinate with your either medical student liaison or your program director and your classmates so that you're not all signaling the same program. Because if 10 people from Rush signal the same program, they're not going to interview 10 people from Rush. So it should be a thoughtful process so you're not stepping on each other's toes.
And I wanted to interject something. So in the question, the student asked if you're not sure whether or not the program signals, what should you do or how should you handle that? And so I wanted to offer that you can respectfully ask your program just to confirm that they are in fact signaling or accepting signals if that's your home program or if you did an AI rotation. And so that's always appropriate. I've seen different students ask things or communicate things to their programs like we are couples matching. And so if you're unsure and you want to just ensure that you're meeting all of the criteria of the program, it is appropriate to respectfully ask and to make sure that your home program and where you did your AI, in fact, wants you to signal.
And I'd also give a direct people to Oren. There is an area in the Oren Orthopedic Residency Information Network where programs are supposed to fill out if they are participating in a signaling program. So use that as a resource as well.
So just as a clarifying question, will you be reviewing applicants who do not signal your program or interviewing applicants who do not signal your program?
Yeah, that's a pretty common question.
I'm happy to start that off. I'm sure we all have slightly different takes on that. I would say it really depends on how many we end up getting. You know, if through signaling we have 800 signals, then we probably aren't going to look too far beyond that group. If it's a smaller number, maybe we will. I think the intention was, again, we are unique in how we designed the signaling program in orthopedics. And as several of the other panelists have already mentioned, by giving 30, we really want it to be, inclusive and really, give us a chance to look at your applications in a true holistic manner, as was alluded to. Because when you have 1,000 applications, you can't give everybody a deep dive into that application. So I would say that I'd be interested in others' opinions on that. But I think the ultimate answer is going to depend on how many signals each program gets and what their capacity is to review applications.
I agree with Josh. I think, that there's good data. There have been several studies that have been presented at the AOA and CORD meetings and posters where there were surveys of students asking how many programs are you truly interested in? And the answer has ranged from 10 all the way up to 25. And so we know that even though everybody applies to 100 or more programs, you're not all truly interested in those programs. You all just want a job. We understand that. And so our challenge and what we're hoping the tokens will do is to help you really focus on those programs that you are truly interested in. And, I think all of us as program directors, if we know that we are somewhere in your top 30, we are happy to, bring you in and talk. If we are number, 169 because you applied to all programs, we may not be quite as enthusiastic.
I think those are very honest answers, and it is, of course, the first year that we have signals, so it's a little bit of an unknown. We're planning to still review all appropriate applications like we would have done in past years and just give a bump up to people who have signaled us. But as Dr. Pat mentioned, if we get over 800 signals, that might change. So certainly the signals are important. We're going into the process planning to review like we have in the past and then look at signals. But there are definitely some unknowns.
Mm-hmm. I would definitely agree with that about the unknowns, since this is the first year that orthopedic surgery is adopting this process. And so our program we will potentially review and potentially interview applicants, whether or not they signal. And just looking at some of the guidance that the AAMC, AOA, and CORD offer, it says that programs may use signaling when it comes to breaking a tie. But again, each program, and there are over 200 programs, may have nuances to their process.
So I think the way we're doing it, we're still in the process of discussing it, but I think we are going to kind of go in Dr. Pat's program's way insofar as we're first going to look at the signals. And then if we don't have a lot of signals or the number is low, then we'll open it up to other applicants that kind of meet the criteria. We are also this year, I do believe we are going to be having a supplemental essay as well, as we've done in the past. Which really helped us to cut the numbers down significantly. And so we are going to be doing that. So I would definitely encourage people that if you are applying, to definitely look at the websites, look at their Instagram pages, just to make sure that other programs are not doing a supplemental essay as well.
And I want to jump back in. So our program at Atrium Health Wake Forest Baptist also has used a supplemental application, and we've done so for, this is about the third year, because we've taken a holistic approach for the past few years to review our application, which includes the supplemental application, which we ask about volunteerism, grit, leadership, cultural competency, problem solving. And it also includes training that we've given for our selection committee on how to minimize bias in the recruitment process. And so I would say, echo what Dr. Kogan said, to look at the program's websites to see like their particular process, so you are aware.
Then we're gonna change gears and come back to signaling. Is for the panelists, what suggestions do you have for international medical graduates in the application process?
I can start. So the some of the points that I wanted to make are just kind of in general, what any applicant should do in general to make themselves as competitive as possible. I would have someone, so talking about the personal statement, I would have someone to proofread your personal statement. It's always good to get feedback on this document where possible. As far as making yourself known, I would suggest attending any residency career fairs or virtual events that programs can put on, especially in this virtual world. It seems that that people are applying to more programs, and so making yourself known is more something that people are focusing on. So those are great opportunities to build relationships and to network with the program, to let people know that you're interested because you show up to their events. And so you can follow the respective programs' social media outlets. I would say network. Don't underestimate the power of networking and building relationships with program representatives that you meet, because when people get to know you, then they'll keep you in mind when it comes time to consider applications and interview opportunities. Be respectful with all of your correspondence with the program, and consider any verbal or written correspondence as a part of your application. It is super important. The folks who you are going to interface with your program, recruitment season is the busiest time of the year. There's correspondence coming via email, by phone, through ARIS, through other internal and external stakeholders. And so it's important to be respectful. If you need to follow up because you haven't heard, respectfully follow up. And also be respectful of the administrator that you interface with. Again, be respectful. That person is a wealth of knowledge on anything that involves the recruitment process. So I would utilize getting to know them to help make you a competitive applicant as well.
Those are great points, and I would echo those. As far as the virtual events, the MSOS, Medical Student Orthopedic Society, has a listing on their website of virtual open houses and events. I would also say it's really important to have, as an, even for everybody, but as an IMG, to have your mentor reach out on your behalf. So if you have a handful of programs you're particularly interested in, to have your mentor reach out and say, I've worked really closely with this individual. They're outstanding. They're very interested in your program. And that should happen at the time that your application goes in, so that hopefully it at least gets a good look and consideration. I think there should be better lists, but there are some lists of IMG friendly orthopedic programs. Residency program list.com has a top 10. I think they're missing some, but they do have some. So knowing what programs have in the past taken international medical grads is helpful. It doesn't mean that programs that haven't will not, but at least some that are appropriate targets. Knowing what programs will sponsor a visa, if that's a consideration, is important. And you can reach out to the institution or to the program coordinator. As mentioned, the program coordinators are a wealth of knowledge. And then I'll put in the chat, we have 3 IMGs residents at our program right now. One of them said he'd be happy to be a resource as well, reaching out to international medical grads who are orthopedic residents now, can share their journey and probably have some good points along the way.
Very good. I think the next question we have, I think this is the era of social media and everything's kind of virtual, like Dr. Dawkins said. So what are program directors' thoughts on social media accounts? Everyone kind of has a professional Twitter, professional Instagram. Does that weigh heavily? Do y'all look at that? Does it matter? Does it not matter?
I'll weigh in on this one because I'm not a huge social media fan, but I do understand the importance of it and why people are on it. But I will say we check all of your social media. So make sure that everything is private. Things that you guys may not think is being inappropriate, lack of professionalism, may come off as being that way. There's lots of sources of bias that people have in their social media. There was a medical student who I was speaking with, and I checked her social media, and her boyfriend was all over it. And I said, you can put on whatever you want, but some people may look at that and say, you know what, are you really going to come here? Your boyfriend is X, Y, and Z. So, just be careful of what's on there, and just, have someone else, have a family member, have someone in the medical field take a look at it and just make sure, or just keep it private.
I would say that we don't use it as something we look at early in the process, but as we get later in the process, at the interview stage, or especially at the ranking stage, those are just additional data points that we look at to, really looking for things that are concerning or really, out there, as opposed to, just stalking you.
Well, let's just clear. I don't stalk, but I definitely do.
I wasn't accusing you of stalking, Monica.
When I was in Mississippi, I was the kind of resident who went over everybody's social media, and I brought stuff to light. I found several people who had pretty sexist or racist stuff on their accounts, and I showed it to the program director, and like, we're not interviewing this guy no more. So.
Kevin, that's a great point. I actually do. Now that you mentioned that, I've had residents, before socials, they're trying to get to know people, and they will bring to our attention, hey, I saw something on this person's Twitter or Instagram or whatever. So that's a great point you make there.
And we found some mugshots too.
I would say definitely, having a social media account or, interacting with folks online is not going to get you into a program, but having inappropriate things on there can certainly keep you out.
I would echo as well. Our program, as Dr. Pat said, we don't necessarily look at that initially, but if it's open and public, then at any point someone can see it and bring it to our attention. And we do have an institutional policy that provides guidelines about social media and not putting patient information, even implying, because people can put 2 and 2 together. So I would echo just to be extremely careful about what you put on your social media page or pages.
Okay, so next we're gonna kind of segue into geographic preferences. As we previously discussed, the supplemental ERAS includes geographic preferences as well as signaling. So program directors, what are your recommendations regarding geographic preferences? And especially if your signal list is geographically broad and encompasses more than 3 regions?
I think Dr. Pat wanted to get started on this one.
Yeah, so I saw this as one of the questions, and I wanted to reach out to some of the folks within CORD who helped design this. So the real answer is that ERIS, when they were going through this process of building the signaling process, building the supplemental application, the geographic preference was actually going to be sort of a menu item that people could select. By the time the final decision was made to do signaling through orthopedic surgery applications this year, we could not exclude that as a menu item. So we had to use it. The answer is it kind of disrupts things. So I think the official recommendation is don't totally ignore it, because if you totally ignore it, it actually makes things a little bit weird too. But go in and select no preference, because that's going to make it so your 30 signals are the most important thing. And that's really what we want people to say. We want to say, what 30 programs are you interested in? In programs or in specialties that had three signals, 4 signals, 5 signals, 8 signals, I think that the influence of that geographic entity could work a little bit more towards the student's advantage. But the way that we selected to do 30, my understanding, and Mel can correct me if there's any difference in this, is that you do want to select no preference. Don't just not answer it. Select no preference, and that way the primary focus that the programs see is going to be on those 30 signals that you send out.
Yeah, that's correct. We did not even consider, talk about, mention, think about at all the geographic signaling. That was not part of our discussion. We do not want people to limit themselves with that. So yeah, check the no preference. Otherwise, you may eliminate yourself from consideration from programs that you may truly be interested in. Plus, if you get a program director like me, I want a diverse group, so I don't want all Southerners, Texans, or anything like that.
I guess what are the options you can choose from? One, they have like in just like Northeast, Midwest, South, West Coast.
Yeah, it's the 6 sort of, I think it's 6 standard geographic regions, like Northeast, Mid-Atlantic, South. So that's what it is. And I think that the way it's written is you can pick 3 regions. And then I think there is an urban or rural track too, but you know, honestly, those things are more attuned to, you know, a family medicine residency that has a rural tract, an urban tract. You know, people who are going into internal medicine where maybe they only have 10 signals or 8 signals, but they want to also be in a certain area of the country. So again, I think that our ultimate hope is that we actually just eliminate that from the process next year, if we can do this in a more prospective way, assuming that signaling works out how we are all hopeful it will. But again, I think the issue is that if you pick a geographic region, it could sort of it adds noise to the signaling process, and we don't want that noise. We just want to know where the programs you're interested in. So selecting no preference means that you will go anywhere, i.e. any of those 30 signals are applicable to your preference.
Okay, so next question. What is the timeline for preference signaling? Is it before submitting our ERAS or before interviews?
It goes in with the ERAS application. So it's the ERAS supplemental application, but when you submit ERAS, you are submitting that as well. So before interviews.
And according to the AAMC supplemental application important dates, the date that Dr. Laporte referred to is September 16th at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time is when the ERAS supplemental application closes.
Okay, great. So I think we kind of hit all of our previous questions. So Students, if you want to go ahead and put some questions in the chat, or if you want to unmute yourself and ask a question, that works as well. So I'll start looking in the chat. We have a question from Noel. If a program has not updated an ORIN, if they are using signals, should we reach out to the program director or coordinator?
I'll take that question. Thank you, Noel. So yes, it's always appropriate to reach out to the program director and or coordinator for clarification on a program's ORIN update and profile. And so I would say, yeah, definitely yes.
And so everyone knows on that line of discussion, CORD is continuously sending messages through our listserv to all the programs, begging them to update. And there is a way through ORIN, and I forget exactly where it is in the field for each program, but you can actually look when they last updated their sheet. So again, also when you're telling them, as Artina just said, make sure you say, yes, your information's not up to date in ORIN, just as a friendly reminder.
Be nice to the administrator.
Facts.
So we have another question in the chat. This is from Chanel Brown. For programs with an additional supplemental application, will this be available prior to submitting our ERAS application to that school, or is it something that we get at a later date? I think Dr. Kogan, you probably want to.
Yeah, so our the instructions are on our website, but you send it in to the program director before the application is due. So whenever the applications are due this year, you send in that supplemental essay prior to that, and it gets uploaded into your application.
And I will chime in as well, since we also, the Wake Forest program uses a supplemental application. And so it is available before. We're in the process of updating our website and ORIN and ERAS with more information. So if that information is not yet available, it will be available shortly.
I have a question. This is kind of a point of contention that I've seen a lot of chat groups and blogs online. And one of the things is like asking program directors about support for minority students in the program. How do y'all feel about asking that question? Do y'all look at that negatively or positively? I've heard kind of mixed reviews, you know, where some people get offended by that question.
Mm-hmm.
I welcome the question. I remember a couple of years ago was the first time that I had an applicant and she asked me, and I thought it was really refreshing, and I appreciated it because then I had the opportunity to talk about the program and things that we offer. So, I mean, I welcomed it.
Honestly, if you ask a program that and they are offended by it or don't give you a good answer, do not apply there, because you don't want to spend your residency there. I think if you're not willing to talk about that and figure out how to make somebody successful, then as a student, you don't want to be there.
Yeah, that's your answer right there.
Yeah, 100% agree.
And I would echo that as well, and especially because the ACGME now requires that programs focus on intentional recruitment and retention of a diverse workforce. So there should be a reasonable answer for what they have or what they're working on, because different programs are in different places as far as diversity and inclusion is concerned. So yeah, you should definitely be able to respectfully ask that question.
And I also think that more and more people are asking that question. So you don't have to be worried that you're the only one who's asking it. So I think, you know, people are feeling empowered to ask the question, which is great. And you're not going to be the only one who asks it.
And I would encourage you to ask the residents too, or ask a resident, because they can tell you, you know, from the resident perspective, what they're seeing. So ask the program director and also ask a resident in the program.
Yeah, I think that's what I used to do, Dr. Laporte. When I went to view any place, I would always find a guy who looks like me. And I'd be like, hey man, how they treating you? You know, straight up, you know, I wanted to know how the brother was feeling. And there were some places I did not apply to because of what they told me.
I
One
just
other
saw a question from Alex Parsons that I think is a good question, and actually one that has honestly annoyed me in the past, so I'd be happy to answer it. How should students appropriately contact program directors to gather information about their program, away rotations, and things they're looking for in applicants? So I think that most programs have a program coordinator and/or manager who are kind of the first point of contact. Frequently, many of the students at programs are available on social media to have those questions. But the point I wanted to make is do your homework. There is publicly available information. If you have looked at the Instagram feed, if you have looked at their program's website, if you have looked on Orin and you don't have answers to your questions, then it's a reasonable question to ask. If those things are sitting there in front of you, then I would say, and I would be interested in Artina's opinion on this, when you ask questions about things that are blatantly available on the website, how hard did you really try? Or are you just sitting there trying to make somebody else do the work for you?
Yes, I would agree with that, Dr. Pat, because and a lot of times we do refer students to our website. Now, if the information of the question is not answered on the website, then that's another thing. But yeah, that is very helpful. Again, to my point earlier of the massive amount of communication that program managers, administrators, and program directors receive during this time, sometimes it's a challenge to respond. And I also wanted to say that applicants, if you don't receive a response, don't take that as the program doesn't like you or they're ignoring you. It may be just by the sheer volume. They just didn't get to it. That may have been the 1,001st email, and they have 1,000 others that were in front of you. And so, yes, I would agree. Do your homework, and then use them, the program leadership, as your second level of getting your question addressed.
I think we got a question from Jared.
Yeah, hi, thank you. Appreciate everyone's time. My question is regarding osteopathic medical students. I've gotten a lot of advice recently as to use the preference signaling more so as direct, like the majority of my choices to formerly osteopathic orthopedic programs. And basically not to kind of waste your shot, so to speak, on primarily MD or allopathic programs. And so I'm curious what everyone else's kind of 2 cents is here.
So I'll jump in initially. I would say, again, know about the program. And if you're a good candidate for that program, an allopathic program, I don't think that's wasting your signal, although you want to balance out your signals. You also can look either on the website to get a feel for has that program taken osteopathic graduates before, different but similar to how an international medical graduate would look, just because the merging of programs is new-ish. So I would look at that, and if you're a good candidate for that program. I wouldn't use all 30 signals for allopathic programs. I would balance it, but I wouldn't tell you not to apply to allopathic programs either.
So one question we had from earlier in the chat we didn't get to is how many REACH programs would you suggest signaling? I'm sure this can vary from applicant to applicant. I guess, a lot of people mentioned be strategic with your signaling. So what are y'all thoughts on that?
I would say
I've heard a few. Oh, go ahead, Mel.
I was going to say, as competitive as things are, I don't know what a REACH program is. I think it's truly do your research and send them where you want to go. And, you do need to be realistic. If you know the various criteria for different programs, you can certainly, reach out for some that may be a little bit above where you think you might be an ideal target. But it's really the goal is to express your interest in the programs, and we all have a much broader variety and range of scores, research, whatever activities and applications than I think most applicants realize. Not everybody has 400 on step 1, step 2, and 97 research projects and 3 Nobel Prizes and 2 Olympic gold medals and all of that. Just, Dr. Pat does, but not everybody, not the rest of them.
Just 1 gold medal. No, just kidding. Yeah, I think that I have heard a couple things. Kevin, since you asked that, I've heard people say, oh, 10, 10, and 10, but I agree with Mel. Like, it is so competitive. Sadly, the non-match rate was so high. I would say that if you look through Orin and you think of, of what a stretch is for your application, and that's the key, is what does your application look like? But I would say it'd probably be more like 5 stretch, 20, or the meat of your signals go to sort of the ones that are, more realistic for you. Again, what is that? What does that look like? None of us know really, because these, even the rankings that we see are just that. They're just rankings. We don't know what they really mean. So 5, 20, and 5 would make more sense to me. I have, again, heard 10, 10, and 10, but it's just so hard to identify what is a stretch, what is a safety. It's just so hard to pinpoint that answer.
I do want to just echo again what Dr. Laporte said insofar as working together with your classmates. I just don't think that can be stressed enough. And, if everybody is applying, if you have 10 people and they are all applying to Rush, we are not going to interview the 10 people from the program. And I don't think most places will, no matter how good the applications are. And so working together with your classmates to figure out where people are going to send those 30, I think is probably the best way to give you the best chance.
We have a question in the chat from Garrett Jackson. He says, the supplemental application recommends writing essays for each work and personal experience. Do you recommend that we abide by this or keep it more concise due to the number of applications you all are reviewing?
I'm actually personally interested in everybody's opinion, so I will go first. For us, again, I think of this a little bit as the geographic. This isn't necessarily the piece of the supplemental application that is important to orthopedic surgery in this process. I wouldn't spend a whole heck of a lot of time, filling out a bunch of extra things, because we're probably not going to look at them. We are planning to use the supplemental application primarily for the signals. And that is what we're going to use it for. If you really have some personal or work experience that's meaningful, you should be finding a way to get that into your personal statement. You should find out to make that stand out in your application better. If it's one that you have that is really meaningful and you want to have it in there, fill it out. But I would say that is not the primary reason we are going to be looking at supplemental applications. That is a personal opinion. Anyone else have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'll say, having been on the subcommittee, we got our ability to do the tokens in at the absolute last minute before the deadline closed for ERAS. So all we looked at from a cord ortho perspective was the program signal. We did not look at anything else in the supplemental application. We did not mention it. We did not care about it. All we wanted to do is to be able to do the signaling. And so that's really was our intention. All of the extra stuff is just that. It's extra stuff that we were not intending on anybody to use.
And I'll jump in next. So our program is, we're not utilizing the ERAS supplemental application. We are using our own, based on what I mentioned earlier, is we have conducted a holistic review approach for the past 2 years. This will be our 3rd. And so we are primarily going to focus on the ERAS application. I agree with what Dr. Pat said, that the personal statement is a great place to put, to show yourself, to show your uniqueness. There are some really wonderful personal statements that I've read in the past, and it's just creative writing, and people really are very transparent about what made them come to orthopedic surgery. So that's a great place for you to just show how you stand out or what you would bring to the program. And again, to my point, it was great to have somebody to look at that and to proof it for you before you submit it. But also in our supplemental application, again, we are focusing on volunteerism, grit, cultural competency, problem solving in our program's specific REDCap survey. And so that's what we're looking to for you to really tell about yourself. So again, we're using our personal programs supplemental application and not the ERA supplemental application at this time.
Can I ask you to clarify something there, Artina? Because I think people do you mean for your supplemental application, but will you be using the signaling? Because signaling is in the supplemental application.
Correct. So at this point, we're not using the signaling.
You're not. Okay.
We're not. Correct. We are using our previous process, at least for this year. We may, review that and see for next year, but currently we are not.
Okay.
That's good to know. There's another question that a lot of people have asked, and I don't know where to steer them. It's this whole step one, step two. Step one is kind of nullified, essentially being pass fail now. And how much emphasis is placed on step two? And let's say someone does fail step one, do they still have a shot at doing orthopedics? I mean, what are y'all thoughts on that?
Here, I'll start. I think this year is going to be a challenge because we're going to have some people who are pass fail on step one and some people who have step one scores. And so I think for those who have scores, I think you're probably at most programs going to be held reasonably closely to whatever the program's historic cutoffs or levels are. I've been trying to not pay quite as much attention to them since we do have folks who are pass fail, because the challenge is we're not going to know if someone passed with a score of 200 or a score of 400, but all we're going to know is that they passed. So, it's going to be a challenge. I think the folks who took step one and didn't do as well as they would have liked may be at a bit of a disadvantage over someone who just has a pass on their CV this year. I think just because of the numbers game, again, I think it's going to shift more focus a lot of places on step two. But I think, again, a lot of it's going to depend upon, the signaling and the number of signals that each program gets. If we get 1,000 signals, then it's going to still be a huge number to weed down. And I think that's where the numbers games will come into play more as a weeding tool. Whether that's right or wrong, probably wrong, but it is what it is, unfortunately.
I think, Kevin, did you ask if somebody failed step one, if they can match?
Yeah, I guess now with the pass fail, if they take it again and pass, and how do y'all view that as program directors?
I think that individual would need to have somebody advocate for them. Anybody can have a bad day. That's a really bad day, but anybody can have a bad day. So if they come back and they pass and they do well on step two and they have a good strong application otherwise, I think they can should be able to match to ortho, but I think they would need a mentor to reach out on their behalf. So somebody opens up that application and takes a good holistic look at it. And it may be something, if there are extenuating circumstances, that they need to either address in their application, whether that's in their letters or the dean's letter or the personal statement, and be prepared to discuss at their interview. So it's an uphill battle, but I don't think it's insurmountable if the rest of the application is strong.
So Dr. Laporte, would you recommend a person like that to take step two?
Absolutely. Yes. I think they would need to have a score on step two for people to, yes, the people look. And same with somebody who has a scored step one, that's on the low side, having a strong step two will really help out a lot. Yeah. And it shouldn't be like that. It shouldn't be based on numbers, but that's I think an unfortunate reality.
I can answer the question that Kelsey Henderson just posed. She asked for programs that are not participating in the signaling process this year, what is the best approach for applicants to formally express interest or preference? I think, really what people did last year. So that's attending virtual events, contacting residents, contacting program directors, program coordinators, program managers, figuring out a way. I mean, those were the things that really were signals last year. Those people who showed up at our events, we were more likely to look at your application, no matter what your board score was, no matter what your medical school was, if you had done one of those things.
I think you make a good point, Dr. Pat. At least in Mississippi, we looked at people who signed on to our virtual webinars, and we placed emphasis on those folks as well. If you can't log on to a virtual webinar, which you can just go in your kitchen and not even turn your camera on, how much interest do you have in a place? We have some more questions here. For programs that are not participating in the signaling process this year, what is the best approach for applicants to formally express interest / preference? I don't know if you want to answer that, Dr. Dawkins.
I think Dr. Pat just addressed that question about how to communicate interest and preference if a program is not using signaling. Is that what you said?
Yeah, that was from that was one of the questions. Okay.
Okay. So yeah, by attending virtual events, following programs' social media platforms to see what events they're hosting that you can participate in, reaching out to residents in the program, and just creating opportunities to build relationships with programs so that they see that you are interested by your presence and your attendance at their activities.
Sweet.
I have a question from Jeremiah Alexander in the chat. So what is your advice for classmates who are applying to a specific program? How much overlap between classmates is okay?
Dr. Kogan and I put in our thoughts in the chat. As far as signaling, I think ideally not more than 3 from the same school to the same program, 3 or 4, but definitely would be interested to hear what others think.
I would agree. I think 3, maybe as many as 5 at the most, depending on how many, applicants you have in your class. But I can tell you, this is exactly the way that we did it way back in the old days before it was all ERAS. I remember Georgetown forever has had 20 plus people going into ortho, and can't remember the guy's name who used to run the show, but he would get the class together and divide up who was applying where. And it really helped because if we all get 20 applications, they could be the best 20 applicants in the entire applicant pool, but only the top 3 or 4 or 5 are going to get all the interviews.
I think people can also use the size of the program in that too. If it's a 3-person program, I think 3 is probably max for sure. If it's a 12-person program, maybe 5 is more reasonable. So do think about the size of the program that you're looking at.
And last question we have is, how will the panel look at the application of a re-applicant, someone who didn't match in the past? What can re-applicants do at this point as we approach the cycle?
I'll start out with that one. So I do think that given the match rate as being so 48% or 50% last year and the year before that it wasn't that great, I think that the view of re-applicants is very different than it's been in the past, because there were so many applicants that were so very well qualified and didn't match. So I think, if you are a re-applicant, you need to really look at your application, talk to people and see what was it. Was it that interviews were just virtual last year and there were so many people that were able to interview, whereas previously they weren't? Is it a deficiency in the application? Is it research? Is it the scores? Is it the grades? And so really look at your application. But I don't think, and I look forward to hearing what other people have to say as well, but I don't think that the stigma of a re-applicant is the same as it was 15 years ago.
Yeah, I would agree with that. The advice I'd give when I look at the reapplicants and think of what makes them a good reapplicant versus not a good reapplicant. I've had, and I'm sure all of us have, the reapplicants who hide the fact that they didn't match last year, who squirrel it away and you can't even figure it out until the last minute. And that just seems a little bit dishonest to me. I mean, it's unfortunate, but it happens, so own it. The second thing is figure out in your application and in your conversations with folks, how can you show, or how can you tell them that you are a different applicant? Did you recognize deficiencies in your application the year before? And what have you done to improve those things? I think those are important ways that we can make ourselves a better applicant the second time around.
Sweet.
And be sure to address those things in your personal statement or somewhere in your application.
So it's about 6:30. We're an hour in, so we're just going to go ahead and wrap up. I would like to thank all the panelists for coming and answering all of the students' questions. Also would like to thank all of the students and attendees for coming and asking questions. I'm going to share a couple slides with some of the program directors' contact information, as well as how to follow Gladden Society on social media. Thanks again for everybody coming.
Yeah, it was really a good panel.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So here's Gladden Society's Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And then here's the contact information for our panelists.
Thank you so much. This is Dr. Brooks. I'm the membership committee chair for the Gladden Society. I know many of you all probably got text messages from your friends saying that they couldn't log in. We did not expect to get so many people that were interested in this. And so that's actually a good problem. But for those of you who had friends, classmates that weren't able to log in, we will make this publicly available on our YouTube page early this week. And so you can tell them to check our Gladden Society YouTube page, and it will likely also be re-advertised on our social media platforms.
Yeah, major thank you again to all the panelists. I know y'all are busy, and this was really awesome to share y'all insight. Thank y'all so much.
Should I stop recording now?
Yeah.
Okay.